Hey, what's up, jerks? Welcome, welcome. We got Sallyport video. We're going to be getting into that. Karen Reed going to be in court tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. One of the biggest things from the last case, the last trial, was the introduction of this inverted Sallyport video. It just made us gasp in the first trial. Bettero was on the show, and all of us, we thought that Vev might just lose her shit after that was introduced to court, inverted. But she seemed to just gloss it over. We know that the defense is going to make a much bigger deal about this in the retrial. And tonight we have a video expert. She goes by Video Jesus. We also know her as Abby. She's on Twitter. She's also got a YouTube. We're going to be promoting those tonight. We're going to put those in the chat. Please follow her on Twitter and YouTube. What I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to kick back and watch this thing. I think I've seen this one. I'm not sure if this is a different version, but she's sent along a bunch of videos. We're going to play this 10 or 11 minute video about the Sallyport that she sent along to us tonight. And then I'm going to bring up Abby and interview her about the Sallyport video and her examination of it. She went so far as to, I believe, get the same camera that they were using in the Canton Police Department in the Sallyport. So this is going to be an interesting discussion tonight. I'm looking forward to it. With no further talk, let's just watch this video that Abby sent along to us tonight.
So let's talk about frame rates. I know this is not microdots. It's a little nerdy, so bear with me, but let's get the basics down first. So frame rate, simply put, is a number of frames or images that appear per second of a video. And the frame rate is really measured by what we call FPS, so frames per second. The more frames in each second of a video, the smoother the action. On the other hand, the fewer frames could also result in key or motion blur. Many security cameras allow users to adjust the recording frame rate. Lowering the frame rate can improve the network streaming and conserve storage space. Conversely, the higher the frame rate, the better the quality, but also the larger file size that the video is going to be. So think of it this way: the lower the frame rate, the lower the file size. The higher the frame rate, the larger the file size. So if I was in a nonlinear editing software program like Premiere, I had a 15 frame per second video and I put it into a 2997 sequence or even higher, what's going to happen when we get into the GOP in the next slide is going to add frames in the export. So adding frames to 15 frames per second. So if it's 15 frames per second, I export it 2997. It's going to add frames to each second. But what we're going to do now is we're going to watch a simplified explanation, just showcasing some of the different frame rates that security cameras have the capability of doing per the user settings. So let's play this video.
The purpose of this video is to compare various recording frame rates that can be used in closed circuit television and network IP-based video surveillance systems. This is a side-by-side comparison of video that was recorded at 30, 15, 7.5, 5, and 1 frame per second. When planning a video surveillance system, the frame rate that the DVR and cameras support is one of many things to consider. In our experience, recording between 7.5 and 15 frames per second is the most common. This is because very little quality is lost, as you could see here. Once you start going below 7.5 frames, the choppiness is much more noticeable to the human eye.
So in a nutshell, that's what we're talking about as far as frame rates and recording. So Axis cameras, you can film anywhere from 1 to 0.997 frames per second. Why is this important? And this really goes into what we're going to be talking about next, which is wrappers and flavors. We're referring to the encoding and decoding process. And we'll get into that in this slide. So what is compression? So a video codec shrinks or compresses a digital file to be more easily stored and distributed. Codecs have two main components, an encoder and a decoder, that works together to make a video file size more manageable. An encoder, the encoder is part of the codec that handles the actual compression of the file. And this is what we refer to as a codec flavor. There are many flavors across the board. A decoder is a component of a video codec codec, which prepares the file for viewing after it's gone through the compression. It decompresses it into a specific video container. And we call this, and we will refer to this as a file wrapper. And so just to put this in more of an analogy, let's imagine a world without video codecs. Uncompressed audio and video files can take a huge amount of storage, especially for lengthy recordings. Without video codecs, you'd essentially have to wait minutes or even hours to watch videos on YouTube because of the enormous file size. And this is what codecs and wrappers help us with in order for us to stream better, to store files better, and to be able to get better quality in what we're exporting and encoding and decoding. So a codec uses an algorithm that determines the best way to shrink the size of your video file while still keeping everything intact. So let's get into codec flavors. So there are many different type of codec flavors, and that includes H.264 and more recently the H.265, which is the HEVC, high efficiency video encoding codec flavor. Other types include AV1, MPEG-4, MPEG-2, VP9. So these codecs really refer to how the video stream itself is compressed and encoded, and essentially how the stuff, quote, stuff in data is laid out in the box container. Common codecs include H.264, which is really what we're talking about in the Sallyport. Get into video wrappers. So I just want you to think of video wrappers as containers, different formats for wrapping a package. Just like you might use a cardboard box padded with an envelope or gift wrap to package an item. Video containers wrap up the encoded video streams in different ways depending on their use. You're probably familiar with image formats like JPEG. Similarly, video files use special formats. Some of the most common packaging formats are MP4, MOV, and AVI containers. So now let's get to MP4, which is more widely supported container that focuses more on live streams. So just think of Vimeo or YouTube, Twitter, Meta. They all use MP4s in a lot of their decode and encode. So when we're talking about Echovision, which is a lot of what I posted about, records a video in an H.264 flavor, which is what our last slide was about, was more of the codecs. And this records and uses a proprietary wrapper, which is called an EVX. And that's when we go to codec wrappers. So an EVX is a proprietary wrapper that Echovision uses to, again, wrap the video stream. It's then packaged into an EXE. And this format packages the video data along with a built-in player, allowing the player on Windows systems without requiring additional software, which is kind of what we also saw in court with the pre-screenshots that I posted on Twitter. But this is essentially at the foundation where the Sallyport, in addition to how it functions with Echovision, is recorded and how it's also exported. And this is particularly useful in sharing clips with users that do not have Echovision installed. So I just want to put that out there for the people that are wondering how all of these things are related. This is the two foundations of how all of these things come together in one EXE. So now let's get to group of pictures, which is a very complicated technical concept, but it's actually pretty easy to understand when, you got to get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Group of pictures is composed of IBP frame structure. Different codecs, which we call flavors, have different algorithms that determine this. There's long form GOP and then there's short form GOP. About GOP, the I frame is used to predict the first P frame, and these two frames are also used to predict the first and second B frame. Okay, so I know what you're thinking, this is super confusing. So let's break down what an I frame is, a P frame is, and a B frame is. GOP, the first frame, behaves like a complete picture, such as a photograph. It is able to be encoded and decoded on its own. Everything necessary to display it is inside the I frame. So think of this as a full picture. P frames and B frames are more what we would like to refer to as motion frames. Now let's talk about a P frame. So P frame means predicted frame. These frames only save the difference motion vectors between themselves and the former frame, usually the I frame. This significantly reduces the file size, as most video sequences exhibit significant redundancies between frames due to movement. This is also called temporal redundancy, and we will get to this when we start talking about the ghosting frame artifacts that we've seen in the Sallyport. Now let's talk about B frames, by predictive frames. The B frames are more densely compressed than the P frames, and they are more compressed by taking information not only from the preceding times, but also from the future times within the GOP. These frames can achieve the highest compression ratio, but it should also be noted that B frames are also the most dependent on the surrounding frames for accurate decoding, which is why B frames arguably is one of the most important frames because they are such densely compressed. So let's talk about GOP length. A short GOP length will generally help improve video quality, improve random access and error resilience, and make the video easier to edit since it has more frequent iframes. The more iframes in a video will allow more points for clean cuts. Remember this. More points for clean cuts and edits without depending on many subsequent frames. However, shorter form GOP will use more bits and bit rate to maintain a higher quality. And this is important to note when we're looking at security camera footage. Long form GOP is generally better for compression. It produces smaller file sizes or a lower bit rate at the expense of potentially decreased error resilience and fewer opportunities for the user to do edits. So again, if we're going back to types of GOP, short length GOP is really great for editing. It will provide more clean cuts without depending on many subsequent frames. Long form GOP, which is where we add more P and B frames, is going to decrease the file size and achieve a lower bit rate, but it's going to be at the expense of potential decrease in error resilience and fewer opportunities for the user to do edits. So it's really important to note in the Sallyport. And that's really important to know of why we can see these clear cuts where the picture does not make sense as a form of, even if this was just natively exported, right? The one downside of GOP is compression and temporal artifacts. Iframes, like complete standalone photos, every frame contains a full image. They're reliable, resistant to visual errors over time, but do require more storage, which we covered. So there are some codecs that will do all iframes, which is great. The picture is awesome, but the file size is massive, and it is massive for playback, and it's just not really practical in everyday use, especially in particular for a security camera. This an H.264 codec. So when we start talking about P and B frames in relation to temporal artifacts, think of it like a flipbook that only draws changes between pages. Efficient for storage, but small errors in one frame can ripple through the others. And this creates visible distortions. We call these visual distortions temporal artifacts. And these can include anything from motion inconsistencies to blurring. For example, what can happen is if you are editing something that's 15 frames per second, it has a long form GOP or even a short form GOP. Once you make the cut, you might be able to see ghosting from the preceding predictive or by predictive frames. So why I know this was cut is because if we just slow down this clip, so let's look at this motion. It's a lot of movement going in, and particularly if we had a 15 frame per second security camera recording frame rate, we would expect to see if there was something, again, maybe there was some disruption in the file, we would expect to see some of these artifacts that we're looking at now, right? Because we're seeing these people that are walking and it's cutting on that kind of motion. So this isn't a natural in relation to what we can look at here. So if there was a problem with the file, we wouldn't get this smooth motion. So we see the car coming in. It's probably the fastest thing in this scene throughout the whole Sallyport is when the car pulls into the garage. We don't see any temporal distortion because we see this temporal distortion when we're cutting on something, which means that we're cutting on a frame or a predictive or a bidirectional frame editing program, because I do believe that this was edited in After Effects. I don't believe that they match the native frame rate, because if it was a 15 frame per second clip, we wouldn't be adding P and B frames. But for some reason, this video is adding P and B frames, which is really, really key to the reason why this video is edited. For example, some of these frame rate challenges can come into play when we are working with group of picture codecs. And in particular, for example, say can be applied to security cameras, but say you're filming something on your iPhone and your frame rate is 15 frames per second and you put it in a 2997 timeline or even a higher frame rate timeline. What you're doing is you're doubling or tripling P and B frames. So we're making more P and B frames, so we only have a limited amount of iframes. And this is what causes a ghosting, almost like a comet trail. It's almost like doubling pages of a flipbook by guessing and adding new ones between the originals.
Wow, that's a lot to take in for a lot of us. I was watching the chat and I'm watching along myself, and I feel you, people. I get it. But we have Abby here, and hopefully she's going to treat us like we're non-tech people, because it is a lot. But the big thing on this video is that it was inverted. So right away, there's something fishy. And then there's people coming in and out of thin air, which is really strange. They said it was motion detected, motion. I don't know. Doesn't seem like Abby believes that. It seems like she thinks there's some editing being done here. And a lot of it has to do, well, let's bring her up. We're going to put her, like I said, in the chat tonight. We're going to put her Twitter and her YouTube so you can watch all her videos, all her posts on Twitter. Make sure you follow those tonight. I know one of our mods, I think Sarah's going to be posting those up tonight. And as soon as I see them posted, I will pin them in the chat. That's when you see me take off my glasses. I'm looking to see what I'm pinning in the chat. Here it is. She just did it. I'm gonna pin it right now. Let's just do that before we bring up the guest. I want to make sure that I get that. I don't forget it. Sarah has. Oh, no, I'm hitting the wrong thing. See, look at me. I'm such a boomer. Hold on. Let's see if we can pin this. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So it's Abby. X.com Abby Elizabeth. Almost. Check it out. And youtube.com at CT Video Jesus. We got it pinned at the top. You don't even have to remember it. Just find it at the top of the chat. Please follow those links. Let's bring her up. Abby is here. Everyone's wicked excited. We have a good audience right now. This is good. A lot of people just saw this video, I think, for the first time. She's been posting it on her Twitter and her YouTube, so follow her. She's also someone who looked at that weird, I don't know if it was a video or a picture of Alan Jackson in the past. They were trying to link him with Karen Reed. It seemed very bogus. She looked into that too. She's done some great work on the video stuff, and let's see if we can try to understand what's going on here with the Sallyport video. Welcome to the show, Abby.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Sorry if I confused some of the chat. It is pretty technical at a top technical level, but I mean, some of the concepts once I can simplify it may make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I'm somebody who got an iPhone 5 years after everybody else did, like a smartphone. I still have the flip phone.
Yeah.
I just figured out how to redirect videos here on YouTube in the last week, and that was a huge breakthrough for me. So it's amazing that I'm able to even do the show honestly by myself. But this stuff, it doesn't look right. Let me ask you this before we get into all the Sallyport video. How did you start following the Karen Reed stuff? How did you get involved? How did you decide to make a Twitter account?
So my mom lives in Massachusetts, and she saw this crazy trial where she told me that a video was entered into evidence in court and it looked like it was edited. So that immediately piqued my interest. So then I kind of started following a couple of people on Twitter, and then I just started creating a profile, and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can figure out this troubleshoot because I have a video engineering past. So it was kind of the perfect challenge for me.
Excellent. And so this video, the Sallyport video, you really do think that this was messed with and edited with, right? That's kind of your conclusion on this?
Yeah, because the one major thing too is we see the time code skips. So that's a huge sign. So there's a couple different ways that can happen. One, if the file is, again, kind of what they said in court. So for example, maybe they had a screenshot video and they were, they did a video snippet tool. Just think of something like Loom or another screen capture tool. You can even do that on Vimeo.
Or StreamYard too, right?
Yeah, or StreamYard.
Sometimes I'll record videos from YouTube, edit them on StreamYard privately, and then, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one way to do it. But the one thing that we did see in court is right when they shut down the video, we saw a bunch of these Equivision files. So that makes me think that it was either maybe the icon was changed, or more accurately, they swapped out the stream file. So when I talk about codecs and wrappers, so think of it like a box, right? So this is the box where we would say this is an MP4. And in this MP4 would be what we call the video stream. So this would be the video stream. And then this would be the audio stream. So those containers really hold all the video information. And what you can do in programs like FFmpeg is you can actually swap out the H.264, which is that codec. So this is what we're kind of talking about with the little pieces of paper. So you can swap out that codec in one of the proprietary containers. So they have an exe that you can play in Equivision. You can also play a .ps, and then you can play a .psx. But those are the only types of files that you can play in Equivision, which is why this was kind of an interesting troubleshoot, if that makes sense.
Do we have any idea? I'm sure the defense knows, but do we have any idea what type of file that video was in?
It was definitely an unencrypted file, because we saw that in the last motion where they cited that they couldn't get any hash values. So automatically when you export an exe, if there's a hash verification to it, you can, it's a additional option that you can export with. But if you don't have that hash verification, then the stream, when it exports, is not encrypted. So you could easily swap that out of the container, proprietary container, because basically the video stream is an H.264. So H.264s you can play in an MP4. You can also AV, not so much like an AVI. So AVI is kind of a different video codec to that. So it was, I would imagine that they swapped out the actual video stream file in one of the containers.
Wow.
And that's why I kind of made the whole video about that.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not confusing people.
No, I mean, I think I kind of got the gist of it without really knowing, but
and I
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, and I do say that only too because the time code skips. So in Equivision, if I export a .ps file or one of the proprietary types, the time code isn't going to skip, because it's also a separate file that is played in Equivision. So we have like the video stream, we have the audio stream, and then we have basically the time code that's separate. So there's no reason why that time code should jump.
And how do you see the time code skip? That's my, like, I don't know. Is the time code showing on the screen, or is that, how did you know that?
Yeah, so if we go back and we see the video in court, we can see when it's played in Equivision, the time code will, jump a few seconds. And then I think there's like 11 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, and then it jumps like minutes at a time. So that's where it's interesting, because it shouldn't do that natively.
What about the excuse that they use that it's motion activated? It's a motion activated camera, and that's why it didn't catch everything.
No. I mean, because we see it cut on motion. And so that's the interesting part. When the guy gets out of the car, it's cut. When we see those ghost frames, and all those ghost frames, what I think happened, and this is where the frame rate comes in, is that I think it was natively recorded at 15 frames per second. And that's pretty baseline. It's good for storage. It was probably 15 frames per second, and they put it in an editing software program and forgot to change the timeline, which is why we also get the millisecond jumps.
And like you said, about like there's certain times where you see people like totally disappear. They show up and then they disappear from the frame. Like it reminds me of like Star Trek, Beam Me Up Scotty. Like it just, where did they go? Like Phantom of the Opera. Is that part of that? The editing thing?
And I think, yeah. So that's really what, and every time that you see a cut, you see those ghost frames, which is what we call temporal redundancy. So it's like it's a temporal artifact. And that happens when, if you think of, so there's a couple different codecs. So we have the interframe codecs, which is really that H.264. So that's what all security cameras usually use, or sometimes they can also use like a JPEG image sequence as well. Different cameras have different recording formats, but Equivision specifically uses H.264. And then so we know that it's not all iframe. So all iframe is, think of when you see a movie or like ProRes, think of like MOV ProRes footage. That means that every single frame in that video is an all iframe. So it's one single picture. And that's why it's really great for really high res footage to have all iframes, but it's not good for storage. So that's why, again, a lot of these security cameras will use codecs like H.264 or MPEG-2, because it does have that algorithm compression for those IBP frames that basically predict the iframe, and that significantly cuts down the data. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. So this was not an iframe? It was
No.
one of those other. Okay.
It's not an all iframe codec. So when we think about, and that's what I try to refer to as flavors, an H.264 is a flavor of codec. So that's the encode part of the file. That specific type is specifically an interframe. So we call that like a GOP pattern, which is kind of what we talked about in the video. So it only has one iframe, and then it has a B and a P frame that predict that one movement of the iframe. So kind of think of it as a flip book.
Yeah.
Or one of those old motion pictures where they had like little cartoons.
Excellent. Could say, well, let's talk about the inverted video, because this video was inverted. They tried, they basically didn't acknowledge that it was inverted, which was beneficial to them because they were trying to say no one was near the cracked taillight. Look, and they're showing the wrong side of the car. How does that like security cameras? Do they invert video? Is that common? Is that something that they had to do to make happen? What do you think about that part of it?
Yes, and that's why I also think it was done in Equivision, because if you did that in post, you'd have to add the time code after, which would, be kind of a pain, and also be counterproductive for you to have the time code skip, because you can see the time code skip in the player, but you can also see it in the footage as well. So you can flip it in Equivision. So there's a setting where you can mirror the footage. And when you mirror the footage, it's not going to mirror the time code. So the time code will stay correct as the video is mirrored in Equivision. And then Axis cameras, also you can do that in Axis Companion and Axis Camera Station Pro. So those are two options that you can actually do in the program. The interesting thing so for example, if this was motion activated, right, you would export the video on a timeline, but it would almost like those parts that were missing would be either like a black slate, and it wouldn't skip like that. So there is a setting in Equivision where you can export clips into one overall clip, which is kind of how I think that was done. And you can do that in the enterprise version, which I'm sure that the police have like at their disposal.
What would you suggest to the defense if they're watching right now, or if I'm forwarding this to them later, which I definitely will try to do? What would you suggest that they handle this? What should they be looking at?
So they should be looking at, I would assume that they don't have the .ps files, the .psx or the exe file, because if that was an actual real capture, you could actually go into Equivision and it's a simple setting. They can go, file option authenticate, and it will authenticate the file. If they don't have that, that means the file doesn't have any hash, or we like to call like the encrypted part of the file. So I would think that they probably have like an AVI file or maybe an MP4 file. But considering that temporal distortion, it does look like that it was put in an editing system. And I believe that if they go to like if they have the files they were given by the prosecution, they could go in and look at the IBP patterns, because H.264 has an algorithm, or the way the program will encode and decode based on the containers and the wrappers. The flavors and the wrappers. So if they actually had a video expert that could analyze that IBP pattern, you would be able to see like very inconsistencies within that algorithm.
When you say flavors and wrappers, I'm thinking of blunt wrap.
It's just easier to understand. It's like codecs and, containers, and people get very confused by, again, the encode is really the flavor of, the video stream. So if it's an H.264, an AV1, MPEG 2, the wrapper is really that, and, is what contains the video stream and the audio stream and even the subtitles. And that is what we call a container or a wrapper. So almost like that package that wraps everything up in a nice little data file.
I'm like speechless tonight because I feel like I'm in territory. Usually usually when I have guests on, I feel like I have a lot to say because I know a lot, have this conversation. But tonight, it's like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to keep up, just like the audience tonight. This is interesting stuff. The inverted, I want to ask more about the inverted stuff.
Yeah.
So most security cameras, I'm guessing, aren't inverted, right? Like, I don't think my camera here at home, my security camera, it's not inverted, right? Like, that's not like a natural thing, right? That has to be What do you think?
It's not a natural thing. I mean, I've unless somebody just messed with the settings or they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, maybe they inverted it by accident, but I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it.
Yeah. We've got some great people here too. I just saw attorney Nan Gallagher's in the chat. I saw Mazza in the chat. I saw James Jackson from the JFK Show Off Show. He's here too.
Yeah.
We got some great people here tonight. A lot of people want to check this out. You may have some more people asking you to come on their shows to talk about this. I did pin in the chat too. So if any other YouTubers, creators want to reach out to Abby, you're going to know where. It's at the top of the chat. You got her Twitter right there, her Twitter X handle, as well as her YouTube channel. So if you want to find out more, definitely follow Abby tonight.
And I provided you some test footage too. That you can kind of see how I inverted the video and what the time code looks like. So the other interesting thing about the time code is I know there was this debate whether, the different fonts and the different colors, you can actually change that in Equivision too, which is again why I think that the original file was replaced with a stream, because it does look like, again, it does kind of look like an Access time code that's pretty native to that program. And you can flip it again. You can flip the video, and that time code within that editing software of Equivision is going to be going to be right when the video is inverted.
How much time did you put into researching this software? This what do we call it? Equivision?
Actually, I did a lot because I didn't really know much about it. So my past experience, I used to work as a video engineer for Avid. So it's a nonlinear editing software company.
Yeah.
And so actually,
huge.
yeah.
It's like Pinnacle in them, right? Yeah. I used to use
that.
Yeah. Wow.
I used to do troubleshooting on their nonlinear editing software program and then their shared storage. So like that program is actually really complicated.
It is.
You think this is hard? Like that's even harder.
I gave it up. I was like, once Microsoft came out with like the Windows, whatever that one was, that's so much easier. I was like, frig this Avid. It has all the bells and whistles, but it's for the professionals, not for someone like me.
It's not a prosumer product at all.
Yeah,
it's
It's for the tech nerds. That's the top stuff. It's amazing that you work there and you're using it here. So we're so lucky to have you talking about this.
Well, I mean, I know it's confusing, but
yeah,
it kind of follows almost the same concept. So when I worked at Avid, we would have to, sometimes files will get corrupted, so we'd have to rebuild the files. So for example, we would, make a copy. So if they had the raw footage, we would basically ingest the footage again, rebuild the MXF file. And this is kind of almost the same thing in retrospect. You would have to kind of, if you think of it this way, so say you had like a .ps file, which would be like the Equivision file in folder A, and then you had an MP4 in folder B. You would literally just swap out the two H.264 streams within the file, and it would natively play in Equivision. That's why I think I overcomplicate it, but that's essentially how it was done.
Got a comment here. Some super chats came in. I want to thank Brett Happens and Coffee Cake and Sherry D. She's always here. Thank you, Sherry D. She says, Abby, in your opinion, who, if any, in Canton has the capability, knowledge to cut, edit the video?
Colleen.
IT, he says guy. She says IT guy. IT lady, I'm going to say. Colleen, her last name's Crawford, same name as me. The supervisor, any clues to figure out when the edits were done?
I think it was, I don't want to get like a lawsuit, but yeah. I would say that hypothetically, Colleen has all the knowledge to do that. Because when you replace a video stream in one of those proprietary containers, you'd have to use FFmpeg, and you'd have to make sure that the file itself is pretty intact for the most part. And she does have a video production background, and she also has training in FFmpeg. So that's where I think that she has not only the capability to cut it, and she's specialized in Adobe products in the Creative Suite, but she also knows the forensic background as well. So it's pretty easy for her to do, to be honest. If I can do it, she can do it.
It's very suspicious that she was at Canton Police Department when the expert from Karen Reed video expert shows up to view the footage, and she's there, but she doesn't know anything about that he was gonna be there. So she says it's just the whole thing is weird. Yeah, I
And they
just
wouldn't
want.
want to get it over those original files either. So that's the thing. So hypothetically, you could, again, replace the video stream. So folder A, stream H.264 in the proprietary container. You have another one in the, you edit the file a little bit. You replace the H.264 in the original file. The only issue is that if you play it in Equivision and you try to authenticate it, it will crash the program, or it just won't authenticate it. So that's why they didn't want to give over the original files or the edited file. That's my theory anyways. Because
Yeah,
you
I
get it to
was just
play.
gonna
You just
bring
can't get
that
it to
up.
authenticate.
They don't have the copy of the original files. I mean,
Yeah.
does that seem very sus to you? Like a Boston police officer dies, you'd think out of all the days they would just save everything from that day, right? But they don't have it.
And they played it in court. So like in that video that you just played too, I just shared a screenshot. So those are Equivision files. In that one, it was like maybe for 10 seconds. It was day 20. So you can see there's Equivision extensions. So there is an exe and a .ps. That's a little strange to me. And then on top of that, if they had that to begin with, why wouldn't they just give that over to the defense? Because at that point, it would be pretty easy to authenticate if it was a true program, if it was a true file.
It's very strange. I mean, and some other things in that video that were strange too was that they were pulling the vehicle in, and there was snow all around, on the ground, melting like they had already had the car in there, and then they moved it out and moved it back in for the video. Do you think that was strange, or is that just me?
Hypothetically, and when I said that it was either, I think it was exported as multiple clips, and that's why you see the time code skip. And there is a function for that. It's called a case management export, where you can add bookmarks and then export like 5 or 6 clips into one file. So, I mean, you could do that out of order. You could really, as long as you keep the length, you could hypothetically, it could have been any time, to be honest. It could have been any time. It could have been, I think it was edited out of sequence.
Yeah.
And you saw multiple files in that folder from it was like 129, 130, 131, 21, and then 22. I know that there was a video from 22 at the Sallyport, but there was a lot of different files in that one screenshot, which I think is very suspect.
Definitely. We got T Wade. I think that's Tiffany. She has a question from Olivia Now. I guess Olivia Now's in the chat, and I might have missed her question, so she's reposting it. And she says, what about the other SP video? Was it tampered with too? The other Sallyport video?
I think so. And I think you can see the curve from the highlights. So again, if you wanted to, you'd have to export like an original file. And all you'd really have to do, again, if you wanted to put this in an editing program, because you can't edit an Equivision file because it's not a native, it won't export, it won't import into Adobe Premiere or Adobe After Effects. But if you had an H.264 file, so you just switch the containers, you have like your edited file, you could easily put a curve on it. And I did a lot of different lighting tests, and it does look like an RGB curve was applied to that, so it looked darker.
How would you do something like that?
You could just go into After Effects or any Adobe Premiere and just go to curve settings. I usually use the Luminotry setting, but it's pretty easy to do. And even that tracking. So I know that Microdots made a video of the taillight and how it was that the white, it looked like it was cracked, even though it was the wrong taillight. So you could actually do that in After Effects, where you put a track mask on it. So you can just track, you set like little points to the taillight, and then you can put a little mask over it. You can change the color.
That was weird. That was the video that Kevin saw and was like, look, and then he never said anything about it again because he found out he had been conned by the prosecution with the inverted video, right?
And if you didn't change, so natively After Effects, like if I put like a 15 frame per second video in there and I make a new comp, it usually will like set to 29.97. So unless somebody checked the frame, like the frame rate on the original file, it could have again. And that's where I think you can see those cuts. And those cuts look like, again, it was almost like the video was clipped in Equivision and it was clipped on a B or P frame, which is why you kind of see that frame ripple. And then in After Effects, you can see it's adding frames because it's making almost that compression even longer. So that's where I think that there is more frames added to that ghosting. So you kind of it almost looks like a comet trail.
Wow. Yeah, it does. It does look like a trail. It's like that trailing light. It's a much brighter.
And that happens, and that's not a natural compression either. And I did a lot of tests with the camera. So, for example, if there's a drop in a signal, and I only really got to do it like maybe a couple times, and it was like my internet went out or it just wasn't loading. It doesn't look like that either. Like it won't skip. In that nature, if you see a skip in a security camera, it's usually just because it's that frame rate again. So you could film it at 1 frame per second, but we saw that car going in, which natively does, to my eye, it looks like it was filmed at 15 frames per second.
It's interesting because I could even, once I was, noticed, once Microdots put that out, I could notice that. It was like, wow, that does look altered. It does look like they added extra light to that.
And if you look at the Sallyport, every time that there's a cut, you see that temporal motion, which again, I think it's because it was exported as clips, but then it was also edited out of not a 15 frame per second timeline. So you get an extra frame ripple that's in there that's really not native to that kind of compression.
Wow. Sarah and Shock and Her says, great show, Mike and Abby. She's one of our mods. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you to all our super chats tonight. Romy, T. Wade, Coffee Cake. Thank you, everybody, so far. You're amazing. Sherry D, Britt Happens. Thank you. I'm just wondering, like, where can this go with the defense in the case? Where do you think? Like, how do you think that they might tackle this in the next trial?
I would definitely get somebody that's like a video engineer to look at the file that they got, because if it's that same file, even if it's not in the Equivision format, you'll be able to tell if the long form or the short form GOP is intact. So if those frames are rearranged, you would be able to tell some really different inconsistencies in the frame numbering, and you can usually tell that by using FFmpeg. That would be one way to do it. You can also use Phil Harvey's tool. I use it all the time. It's called EXIF. And that tool can also point out some different, usually if you edit something, it will have an XMP tag. So you can tell if there's edited data in there as well. And you can also tell by the XML if there's added curve information. So there's a lot that can be told in the metadata, even though it's not going to be as good as, again, like an encrypted file. But you can tell some inconsistencies just in the video algorithm of how it's encoding and decoding that's not natural to the file.
We got a legend here. A legend just made a comment. Larry Legend. I call Nurse Kim calls him La. What's up, La? He says Abby is video Jesus and listens to the one video Jesus for all scripture and guidance. And thanks for giving the opportunity to share her genius, gentleman, young jelly. Thank you, La. That was awesome. Thank you so much. They like you. They like. It's funny. I know when we have a good guest, when the numbers just keep going up.
Oh,
slowly, steady up. They just keep going up. They like you. This is good.
I'm not the best teacher in the world, but I did do some. And even when you look at the Sallyport, so I did measure out the Sallyport too, and maybe I'll give you maybe some of that extra content in addition at some point. But you can tell from the actual the lens and what should be in focus. We didn't see anything in focus. We didn't see any facial features at all, which was very odd. And I tested out that camera even with like really bad compression, and you don't see that square pixelation either, which again means it was probably not like a very highly compressed, like a it was a lower compressed file or lower, higher stream rate, probably a little bit lower compression. And it's very smooth. And you look at the lines on the car, they're very smooth, which if it was very pixelated like that, you would almost think of Minecraft, that video game that kids play where you have all those square pixelation. Like you would see more artifacts like that. And you really don't see that in the Sallyport. You don't see anybody's faces either, which that camera should pick up. I did one test and it basically picked up my facial features and I was about 20 feet away. So I did 5 increments, 5, 10, 15, 20, and then 25. And you could still see somewhat of a person. But yeah, you couldn't see any of that in the Sallyport.
We should play some of those videos. We got a few different videos. I got lighting test or the examples, or
if you want to play the
messed up
example
file.
one,
Yeah, examples.
play the messed up file. That's short, and that just
Okay.
shows you the frame rate inconsistencies I was talking about when you add frames to.
Oh, the kitty cats.
See that little frame ghost right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I made like a few little cuts in there. And that's what happens when you cut on a P&B frame. And I removed a little bit more frames in that too, just to give you more of a broader example. But that's what I mean when you cut on a low frame rate and then you're adding more frames to that same picture.
And how did you know what camera to get? You got the same camera that they were using. What camera is that? How did you know about that?
Well, I went to the town of Canton budget records. So usually for every town, they'll have a budget record of, again, that's actually how I came to find out it was Equivision, in addition to what they were playing in court too. But they had a couple of camera invoices from Axis. And usually if they have a vendor, they want to stick with their vendor because they get, good deals out of them. So I figured the last camera that I saw was an Axis 45V, which is actually a very outdated model. I had to go on eBay and win a couple of bids for it. But this is the thing. This is a very old camera. So, and the picture is not that bad. It's a lot better than what we saw in the Sallyport.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to bring up the lighting test one, I can tell you what I like. That kind of gives you the distances of what's in focus, I think. So you can still see some information. You can almost even see the pattern in the background of the pillow.
Yes. Yeah, it picks up pretty good. How far away is that? Oh, that's 10 feet.
Mm-hmm. So near the couch is about 20 feet.
15 there.
And then from the couch to the wall is 25 feet.
Is that probably how big that Sallyport is? About 25 feet, I bet.
Yeah, it's about 25 to 30 feet. So you can.
We saw the kitties and we saw the dancing. You had some fun with this.
I did. I probably had a little bit too
too.
much
I
fun.
love this Axis 3045V test. Normal low lighting. I love it. This is amazing. And there's
so
another one. What's the other one? Shorter? No, that's the other one. Messed up. That's the one we want to play, right?
I think the other one is. I think there should be another one in there. Is that the? Did you only get 3?
I got 4 of them. I got examples, which I think I played.
Oh, examples is the next one.
Oh, should I play that one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, what is this? What is this that we're looking at?
That's the that is the Equivision.
Oh, that is Equivision. I'm gonna put it.
Mm-hmm. And so it gets over here. So this is where I was talking about how you can change the font and the colors. So I just kind of scroll through there. You can see the time code, how it changes.
Yeah.
And so this video currently is not inverted, but then I invert it.
Now you just inverted it?
No, it's coming up, I think.
All right. So the railing will flip. There it is. That's inverted.
Mm-hmm. And that's
Wow.
just a setting that you can do in Equivision. You can
See,
also
that's
do that in
very
Access
clear.
too.
That's very clear.
Yeah. And the
You have
Sallyport's
three
pretty well lit.
cats. You know, you
I
have
do.
three
I very.
cats. Wow. Do they all get along?
They love each other. Yeah, they're all bonded, but they're from different litters, which is it's crazy. I think it's because of the
Oh,
older cat.
yeah. That's good. They look like they're having fun.
Yeah, so you can see how it's, like you can invert the setting, and then I actually played it in Equivision with the time code at the very end. And this is actually a lot darker than the Sallyport, to be honest.
Yeah.
The Sallyport was pretty well lit.
Yeah, it is. I would say this is a little darker, definitely.
So you can see that the picture right now is inverted.
Yep.
And the time code is correct.
That's correct.
And that's played in actual Equivision. So it's the same interface that was played in court. It's basically that's how they did it. They just cut it.
They just whack. Yeah.
And you can see how like there's not any of that distortion.
Yeah. I don't see
Especially
any distortion in this.
You have to really work for it, or
Yeah,
have
you have
really,
cats
really
moving
bad internet.
around, and the cats.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see any distortion here.
Nope. And by the way, this is all motion activated too. So the motion activation setting, so where that first keg stool is, that's where the motion, I set the motion perimeters. And this thing goes on, like even if you're about 20 feet back, not 20 feet. So that's probably about 10 feet. Even if you're 10 feet back, it will trip the motion. And it won't cut on the motion. I've never seen that happen with the camera.
It makes sense. I mean, we all have those. A lot of us have those, Blink, or what is the other one? There's a few different cameras that people have.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it seems weird, the whole thing, because we all use the motion activated cameras, and I don't know, it just seems very weird. The apparitions, especially the people moving in and out, it's just like, where did that person go?
Yeah, and I think I was on the fence whether it was cut in Premiere, and I did discover recently, like in the last week, that they had that case file option where you can export multiple clips, because it just seemed like that compression, that temporal distortion, even if you cut that in Premiere, like it would still have a comment trail, but that was really accentuated, and I think that's an artifact from actually exporting from Equivision too. So it kind of has like a double whammy right there.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm guessing Colleen Crawford's probably going to get some questions on the stand. I think she's not going to be a witness. I'm guessing. If you were the defense, what kind of questions would you ask her?
I would ask her if it's possible. If it's possible, because if they can rework it, because I mean, this is replacing a video stream isn't rocket science. I mean, it's like replacing an audio stream in FFmpeg, because you're really just replacing that container flavor with with an edited stream. So it's really not that hard to do. I wonder if they ask her again if it's possible, and I wonder what she would say. that's my guess, because I did it.
Right. And then if she said no, they'd bring you up, maybe.
Oh God, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd want to testify. I think that would just be you've seen even like the crash daddies, how much stuff they've got afterwards.
Yeah, you'd be worried about it.
There's way better people than me to do that.
The KPs of the world would come after you.
Yeah.
It's funny how they always say, "Oh, everything's witness intimidation," but we do it to everybody. I mean, they attacked one of the crash daddy's wives.
I know.
They went after her. They've gone after Richard Green. They're posting when Richard Green got drunk somewhere and got arrested. They're posting that. I mean, they are everything that they say the Free Karen Reed mob is. You know what I mean? They are the mob. Yeah. I mean, their leader is she calls her what? Mafia troll, whatever that is. I mean, it just.
Yeah. I mean, they're bad.
Yeah.
I would be surprised. I mean, the people that come forward and do, are experts. I applaud them, because you're after the last trial, you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yep. Yep. You got the Mass Mafia troll after you.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
got
can
something
make
on
some videos to
KP.
demo it though.
I got some info on KP. I'll drop. I want to know why KP's got a new phone.
Interesting. Probably because she doesn't want to know what's on it. Probably a
Well,
bunch of fake
ask
videos.
KP if she's got a new phone. Did she pull a Brian Higgins? Did she? I want to know what she did with her old phone.
It probably had too many fake videos on it, after the
Yeah.
whole Karen and AJ thing. I'm just kidding. That's me, but it's probably true.
Too many messages with Brian Tully and D.A. Morrissey and Mello and probably Hank Brennan. I think we already answered this, but do you want to answer it again? They want to know how
Yeah.
you confirm the purchase the exact same camera from the Sallyport.
Well, there was actually another photo. So I think it was somebody on Twitter, which when I first started this, oh my God, like all my followers that I was just making nerdy, video Jesus stuff. And then I started to get followers and I kind of came up with this like, look, when you say a video is edited, it's one thing just to say it. It's another thing to really prove it, because there are some things like those temporal, like distortions that can happen that are natural, that may look like it's edited. So I really wanted to test the camera to make sure how it's recorded, the motion activation parameters, how it functions with different lighting, and also again, what's in focus with the specific type of wide fisheye lens that it has. So when one of my followers posted a video, I think they went inside the Sallyport or just got a quick glimpse of it, and it matched the invoice of the camera model as it appeared to be on the invoice. So I would say I'm 90% certain that it was the 3045E. And I do think that the defense should get that camera and do controlled tests with it, because then they're going to know exactly how that camera functions. And they should basically like subpoena it from the Sallyport, because that would tell them a lot of how it should look as opposed to how it does look.
And how, if you had do you think you've proven that it was definitely edited? Or do you think there's like a percentage, I'm 95% or 75% sure? What would you say the probability that this thing has been edited?
I'm like 97% sure. I mean, the only reason why I say 97% is I'll give myself like a 3% error rate, only because there's really strange things that happen in Oz.
Yeah.
Things just disappear. So who knows? But
could be the Bermuda Triangle, the Canton Triangle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I figured out the workflow. I mean, there's only, there's method A where it was a screen recording, kind of like what you saw at the very end where I flipped the video. I had it playing in what looked like a, Equivision player, just a glorified screen capture video. That's method A. Method B is a more complex method that Colleen did have the knowledge to do, because she knows MPEG-4. She actually has, FF-MPEG, because she has the training, the forensics training on that software. And she also has a production background. She went to Mass College of Art, and she uses Photoshop and Premiere on an everyday basis. And if you actually look when they played that video in court, you can see Premiere and Photoshop in the icons. Wow. So that's why I think that she knew how to do it.
Awesome. There's a comment that says first, Albert says first 30 seconds of Sallyport when SUV drives in front door is daytime and the rear door is nighttime was signed to me. It was doctored. Did you notice that?
I did notice a few flash frames in there. I noticed that it was brighter, and cameras really don't do that either. So that's where I say I think the clips were exported as, again, maybe like the case management files. And then they were, again, the video stream was replaced into it, because once you have all of those, because it's really just the time codes. So as long as you're not making edits and like cutting specific things out, if they're already cut out and they're just made into one single stream, theoretically it wouldn't break the program. So I do think that they could have been rearranged in the editing software as long as the length was kept.
Someone asked, why would the prosecution invert the video? I think we kind of answered that. What do you want to answer that for us? from Marsha.
Well, they wanted to make the left tail light seem like it was the right tail light. And they did, I mean, and that's where that track mask too, because I think even Microdots pointed it out, where they walk in front of it. It was really it was pretty sloppily done. It wasn't good. And the way that it was, and the reason why I do think it was After Effects too, is because After Effects does handle frames a little bit differently than Premiere does. So I do think it was done in After Effects. And that's a pretty common tool. You don't have to be real good at it. It's a basic thing that a lot of people do. So it's not like a very advanced technique. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Crazy.
Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody.
No, I'm confused now on my StreamYard. This is weird. It's only showing me the super chats. I'm trying to like get back to the regular chat, see if we're missing anything. It's not letting me go back to the regular chat. I don't get it. This is weird. Are you noticing this? Do you able to see the regular chat?
Yeah, I think there was one question about the taillight removal video. Why was it so dark? I don't think they wanted to see. I don't think they wanted the person's face there, and I mean they had to match somewhat of the time code. So I think that they literally put a curve on it to hide what they were doing.
Here we go. I got it back. No, maybe. Here we go. I got it back. This is weird. My StreamYard's acting up tonight, or is it me?
No, I didn't even see that super chat. I was reading Leah Baker's comment about the why the taillight was so dark.
Yeah. Yes, we are hiding. You are hiding. Trooper Paul's hiding from me tonight. But I found you. Trooper Paul. People loving you. They said you did a good job explaining, Abby.
I hope so.
Can't even read tonight. I don't know.
It's hard when it's something that technical. You know, I think Microdots does a really good job showing like the visual elements to it, but the technical elements and stuff like that is just like so complicated. It's not complicated, but I hope I explained it, that high level concept, in an easy to understand way, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, I think I have a better understanding of it.
Oh, good.
A little bit. I mean, I don't think I would be able to explain it, but I think I have kind of a, some idea.
Well, it's just important. Like the only reason why I really posted it so in depth is because I was hoping that somebody on the defense would see it and say, hey, like this is possible to play it in Equivision. Because my concern is that the prosecution is going to come back and say, well, it was played in Equivision, so it must be authentic. Because it is very hard to edit a file and get it to play in Equivision. But it's not hard if you replace the video stream and still keep the container. So that's why I think it's really important that they debunk that argument and say, hey, actually, you know what? You can play it in Equivision if you switch out the video stream, which is kind of tricky. It was very sneaky if they did it that way. And I kind of appreciate it.
Very clever. They said this, Leah Baker says they purposely darkened the video of the taillight removal. Do you think they did? Do you think that part was darkened? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that part was darkened because they had to keep the time. They had to keep the time code. And that's really hard to do because that camera is so close. So I'm sure that it actually had more detail than it showed. And that's why they put the curve on it and then switched out the video streams again. I think it was just like a hot swap. Like you would hot swap a hard drive in your computer. They just swapped it out and still kept, the box.
Wow.
As long as it's not encrypted. If it was encrypted, it's impossible. I literally tried to reverse engineer the encryption. I gave up after 2 days. It didn't.
And
it's very hard to do.
I mean, and that's the key too. Like for the encryption, they broke the encryption for the Richard Green stuff on the text too. Like he's basically saying, I've never seen this before. Where the encryption isn't there. I've never seen it before. I've never seen this before. It just seems like a common thing here. Would you be surprised to find out that video was not encrypted?
Oh, I'm sure it's not. I'm 100% certain that it's not encrypted. I don't think it was encrypted when they played it in court, because otherwise, if you wanted to authenticate it, you could literally do it right in the player. that one player that it was played in, it's one button that you can say authenticate. And even if it was, for instance, exported as not encrypted, you could still go in and authenticate the file as long as the streams are intact. But because they swapped out the streams, once you click authenticate, at least it happened to me. Once I did that, it crashed the program.
So I'm guessing it didn't have any hash tags, as Brennan would say, or hash pipe or hash values. No hash values.
You can still get it to play. It's just not going to authenticate, and it won't recognize the stream, because when it's exported out of Equivision, it still uses that H.264, but it's, what's the easier way to say this? The programmer is going to recognize it a little bit. You know what I mean? And if you go back in and have it actually read the file and like authenticate it, it's going to pick up little pointers where it's going to say either it's not authenticated or it's going to break the program, or not break, but corrupt the program or corrupt the file, and it will just crash.
The file. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% certain that it was not the original file played in court. It was not an encrypted file. It never had any encryption. And even the hash. So I don't know if you noticed this in court. Maybe I'm the only one like really nerdy to pick this up. But remember when Brennan said there's a program called XMP and another program called Magic?
Those aren't programs, right? Those are file formats, I would say, right?
An XMP is a file format, and Magic isn't even a program. He's referring to XMP Magic.
Yeah.
It's an actual program, but by the way, you can actually alter data in XMP Magic. You can rewrite it and keep the container. The same thing you could do like the same thing that I'm talking about doing.
So you're saying I'm more of a techie than Hank Brennan, which is pretty low bar. Did you see tonight?
XMP and another program called Magic. I'm like, is he kidding?
Yeah, I even know that it's not it's a file format, not a program.
Yeah, and it's in XMP Magic, I've used it. I mean, it's lazy. You know what I mean? Like when I was citing earlier, I use EXIF, Phil Harvey's tool. Like you could do some really nice stuff, keep the data intact. XMP Magic, when it will rewrite some of the data, if you want to change the dates or change the modification dates, or even just change little tags within it, it will disorganize what the natural container should be. So it kind of, you can still do it, but if you compare it to an original file, you'll see the differences.
So it's not the same.
Yeah, because it basically reads and rewrites the metadata. So if he's using XMP Magic, that's the one thing that I would even say to the defense. Put that argument out there. Be like, hey, you can alter it.
Yeah, that's altering right there. That's like proof. He's basically giving them proof that they altered it.
Yeah, they're using an altering program to read it. Wow. I mean, it has the ability to edit. And it's really easy too. I call it editing for idiots. That's why I don't use XMP Magic.
That's what I would use that. That sounds like what I need.
I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, change a little bit of fields around.
Yep. Kim sends us $14.99, I think Australian bucks. She says if you were given a Sallyport video from another time that's not inverted, would that help you with your assessment? It must be a genuine video from another case. I don't know.
I think what was played in court was the file that, maybe not the file that was given to the defense. I think the defense got an MP4 file or an AVI file, because they could, if the file wasn't authentic, it wouldn't authenticate in the program. So like that's the first thing. If they do have one of those proprietary files, there's an option in Equivision to authenticate the file. If it doesn't authenticate, then you know that those files aren't legit to begin with. But I don't think they have those files, because their expert would have done that already. Or if they do, you can also look at the video stream to figure out, like the modification dates on the stream to see, to where it was replaced is another idea to do too. But I guess I was, prior to this, I was probably 75% sure, because if an uninverted video came out or an actual Equivision EXE came out, then I'd say, hey, I was wrong. But they don't have the original file. whether it was inverted or in an editor, or I think it was probably inverted inside Equivision, to be honest. I don't think it might have been exported as an unmirrored video, but they probably don't have that either, nor do they want to show that because that would probably have like the full length of it. But yeah, I think that whole thing was just cooked.
Now, a question that's not about video, but it's techie. Sweet Carol Ann, I was going to say Caroline, Carol Ann says, what does she think about the 227 search? What do you think about that, Abby?
I try not to talk about that because I don't really understand it. I really just stick to my video metadata. Yeah. But I mean, if they don't have the hash and they're using XMP magic, I mean, it could have just been inserted. I think that it was probably searched at 2:27 a.m.
Yeah.
Is the easier answer, I guess, to say that's probably legit.
Yeah, and it definitely brings up reasonable doubt. I think that's the big key. Mm-hmm. If you can't prove that didn't come in, you're kind of screwed, I think, on the prosecution.
Yeah, I tried to follow that whole testimony in when they were doing it in court. I mean, I was so confused. I don't know if it was just me. But I had to watch it like a few times and I'm like, okay, now I get the concept a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, I think the big thing for me in the affidavit is Richard Green basically saying, I've never, and all the times I've testified, all the cases I've been involved, I've never seen this before where they don't have authenticated data, where they don't have, So
and,
I think,
and the whole argument too, that he troubleshot in multiple programs, that's what you do. You don't just troubleshoot in one program. Like I tested out the camera in Equivision. I tested out the camera in Axis Companion. I did it also in Camera Station 5, another Axis product, just to make sure what I was seeing was correct. Because again, there's 5 different ways to do something. So it's always good to troubleshoot in other programs just so you know what the actual picture looks like. And what are some of those artifacts as far as the motion activation and some of those image settings within each program.
Perfect. Excellent. I mean, we covered quite a bit. I think people have gotten some good info tonight. Is there anything else that we didn't kind of cover that we should be talking about?
I think we pretty much got everything. Hopefully I didn't confuse the crap out of people.
I don't think so. I think people get an idea of this, especially the fact that for me, because I remember seeing, what did you call that? The timestamp on the bottom and that it was moving. I mean, yeah. I didn't know what to make of it because I'm not an expert on that stuff, but I noticed that too. And to realize that that's not supposed to be like that, like you said, like from someone that knows what they're talking about, just not me, you know what I mean? That lends a lot. And I also think just the fact that it was inverted is so bizarro, especially knowing that the inverted video was likely to help them obscure that they were actually by that taillight, that they were lying, that they were saying, we weren't anywhere near that taillight. Well, the inverted video shows you were actually near that taillight. So, I mean, that's a lie right there. That's a bold-faced lie when they get up there and say we weren't near the inverted taillight. We weren't near the taillight. Video is inverted, and they were trying to deceive us. I mean, that's pretty much what is obvious to all of us as lay people, not experts, just average people.
Yeah.
There's deception here.
Yeah, and you can see the blur masks also really just don't make sense. Well, I could say they're blur. The blur in the overall video picture, it appears like it was edited in post because that's not natural compression. Because if you had something that was really grainy and really noisy, you would see some of those artifacts. And it's hard to tell, and that's really why I wanted to get the camera too, just to see what the compression artifacts are, because we were seeing the Sallyport on a TV screen. So I wanted to see naturally, how does that look, when you're recording it and post-record and after record of the export. And that blur where you can't see anybody's faces, that's not natural. As you saw, I did a bunch of tests. I literally couldn't even get it that grainy without getting that square pixelation. Yeah. So I think that says a lot too.
Yeah, and that's again, the other part. I'm glad you brought that up because that is such a big part of it. We've all looked at those videos and said, who's who? We can't really tell. We think we might know, but we don't
Yeah.
know because that's something they could also do too. The blurring the faces. That's like a common thing that the media does to protect people's privacy. I mean, they can easily blur that face out, right?
Yeah, so they can do it in Equivision. So if you have the Equivision Enterprise version, you can get a plugin that will do it just to do, you know, more of a privacy mask. You can also do that in Access Camera Station 5 too. Although when you do the blur mask or the privacy mask, it's almost I haven't seen one that's really smooth. So you kind of get that Minecraft looking artifact.
Blotchy,
We didn't- yeah, but we didn't really see that. So that's why I think it was done in After Effects. I think they just put like a little pen tool and because there's very
just
so if you look at the
darken it up a
dummy,
little bit.
yeah, so if you look at the middle of the dummy is very sharp, but around the top and the bottom is very blurry, which is also not natural for a wide angle lens like a fisheye lens either. So that's why I think it was done in post too, as far as the blur.
Wow. See, that's easy for us to understand too. Like, because normally you're right, it looks like pixelated or something when they usually do it. It didn't look that way. It just looked darkened where you couldn't see, right?
Yeah, it looked dark. It was very blurry, and it was inconsistently blurry. Where, if, for example, if you had a blurry lens, so those are dome cameras. So if the lens had grime on it, or maybe it, you know, you would see some of those spots in the picture, but you didn't really see that either. So that's where I think that it was definitely it was definitely like a blur mask, probably a little bit of Gaussian blur. Took a little pen tool, went around the frame, and that's why you see the middle of the frame is pretty untouched. But just where the people's heads are, up to their midsection, and then like a little bit below, you can, you know, you see that unnatural blur in the image too. So that's something that I did feel like that was also done in post.
It's so shocking to think that someone with the DA's office or the Canton police did that. Like, that even like have that kind of thought. But it seems obvious at this point that something fishy happened. I mean, it's unbelievable in a way that you would think that these people would risk their livelihoods, but not only that, like this would be a crime. If you purposely change this video, the evidence, I mean, it seems criminal to me.
Yeah, they had to get it to play with a time code too. So that's why I think they replaced the file, like the proprietary container, with that video stream, so they would have the time code. Because if you just export an H.264, which is an option in Equivision, you won't get the time code. So you have to play it in the program for it to register and to like match up. And you also see in the player, not even just in the image, but in the player, that's the time code skips too. So that's why it was very interesting. I was actually kind of impressed. And then when I found out who Colleen was, I went on her LinkedIn and I saw that she had training in FFmpeg, and I was like, yes, I knew it. That's why I'm 97% sure too.
And that's why you think it's probably her that did it, because she's got the training to be able to do that.
She knows After Effects. She knows Adobe Premiere. And then she also knows FFmpeg. And what I'm talking about, it sounds really complicated, but it's not really that complicated, especially if it's not an encrypted file, which I don't think it was an encrypted file.
Now, we're not saying that she definitely did it, because, you know, I don't want to get sued.
I'm saying theoretically.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if there was somebody there that could have done it, she would have the skill set. Or if somebody else in the office had the skill set.
That's true.
It's not, I mean, it seems like she does a lot of training for Norfolk County, like the DA office. And that's typical training that you would do in forensics. So is it possible? Yeah. I mean, I think it's possible that anybody could have done it, but.
That's right. Yeah, and it could be someone else. We have no idea who could have, if that happened, who could have done it. Someone said Guarino. It could be multiple people. I wonder if he's got that type of training. Maybe.
Anybody that knows Premiere or Adobe After Effects and knows, FFmpeg, it's anybody's guess.
Yeah. I love what Olivia says. Well, if you're going to plant taillight evidence, you're probably going to go out of your way to alter the evidence proof of your evidence planning. I know. That's just crazy.
It was smart how they got it to play in Equivision, though. It was very smart because it looked authentic. I mean, the image did not look authentic in court. Like, we all knew the video was edited in court, but because it was played in Equivision, it gave it more of a sense of credibility that, hey, if it's edited, then, you can't play it in the player. Like, that's a great argument to make, but until, you figure out the workaround, the workflow to it, it's not that hard.
I guess I missed the super chat. I'm gonna go back and look. I'm being told by my mods. Here it is. Did we ask this one? I thought we did. Let me see. Abby, will you touch base? Let us all know in summary what evidence you, in your opinion, was tampered with. The Lexus in the driveway facing the fence. The right-left tail light looks different. The lines.
Oh, I'll have to take a look at that. Lexus in the driveway facing. Yeah, the Lexus in the driveway facing the fence. That actually has like a. I think we're talking about the image, right? That was like had a really like sharp mask on it. Yeah, that was definitely not there.
Some wild stuff going on in this case.
Yeah, the other videos that were played, it's those I think were played in, I think there was like VLC player was in one of them. There was another like Windows Media Player. Those were probably MP4s and, AVIs. So you wouldn't really be able to authenticate those, but I think they came from other people. But the main thing you could definitely prove, you can prove that the Sallyport was tampered with and it was intentionally tampered with and played in like a proprietary player. It's all game on. It's game
it should
off.
be charges dismissed at that point. This is a good point too. I just love how they say it gets written after 30 days, right? That's what they said about this video system, but they pulled it out of nowhere after 2 years. So basically they just put this video out in the middle of the trial. The defense didn't have it ahead of time. I'm pretty sure. It's just, that doesn't pass the smell test either.
Well, you look at what Lally played in court. He had those on a drive.
Yeah.
There was a .exe and then there was a .ps file. Were they encrypted? Probably not. But I'm wondering, at some point, that's probably the stored files. Maybe one of those files is the original file. It's kind of wild. And the file they played in court too was an .exe, but they imported, but there was another copy that was a .ps file. So they imported it into the Equivision player and then exported it out as an exe, unencrypted. As long as you don't encrypt anything.
Unencrypted. Which
It's
raises
possible.
every red flag around.
Nothing has encryption.
Yeah. Crazy. Let me ask you about this Alan Jackson crap that's been going on, because if I try to give Karen Reed and Alan Jackson a hard time with these first, it was a video from KP, which is highly sus. I wonder if that's why she might have gotten a new phone. KP, is that why? Did you edit that on your phone? But and now they have this new picture. You kind of looked at the video earlier. What was your conclusion about that video that they put out, or picture, or whatever it was?
Wasn't a live photo.
Yeah, what was that?
It was, and the only reason why I know that, well, there's a couple of things. Again, this was just a video file, so this one was like easy to figure out. The GPS data was definitely inserted because there was added a modification date, and then the codec was an MP so when we talk about the wrappers, so the original file was an H.264, and iPhones film on an H.265. So basically what we call like a high efficiency HEIC. So it was basically like a video that wasn't really native to the actual iPhone in the encoding process. And then the color primaries were off and there was a Photoshop XMP. So it was like pretty easy to figure out.
So what does that mean for us non-tech people?
It was color graded. It was probably put into Photoshop. Photoshop XMP could also have been in like Premiere or anything that had an RGB curve on it. But there was HDR gain in there that didn't make sense either. So there was a lot of different artifacts in the metadata that didn't match to a native iPhone capture. It actually had the same iPhone that the camera, when I got the original file, because Kate Peters tried to pass around or I don't know. And then Christy, actually it was Christy that gave me the original file because she was trying to get me to authenticate. And I was like, this isn't real. Like it's definitely not a live capture. Was it a video that occurred? Maybe happened? Maybe, but it definitely wasn't a live cat. It wasn't an HEIC. So it was definitely a video before it was an HEIC.
Shady. They are shady. Yeah.
Well, I don't know why anybody would go through that much. Like, I mean, it's not even that much trouble, but I mean, that's something simple that you can really just do on your phone, to be honest. But it was just shady because I'm like, why would you? I mean, we all knew it looked fake. I mean, that's not what like an HEIC file looks like. But it was very shady how they went around it, and it was like so obvious it was photoshopped. I mean, anybody could tell it was photoshopped. And then it had a Photoshop XMP tag. And CapCut at the end.
CapCut.
I call it CapCut.
I think CapCut is now. Can you not get access to that? Is that like TikTok? It's no longer. It's a Chinese thing.
Oh no, CapCut is like one of those phone editing programs. It's really crappy.
I heard they stopped at like the government when they were blocking TikTok. They blocked CapCut. I heard.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, I heard it's a Chinese editing app or something.
Thank God, it's better for society. I hated CapCut.
It's funny, you know. I think the reason I know that is because of the Facebook ads. You know how they hit you with when they find out you're a YouTuber creator, they hit you with all the friggin' different ads, and it's like, we're the replacement for now that CapCut's been blocked by the government. We're the replacement, you know. So it's yeah.
CapCut was, you know, it's very inconvenient for me because I have a lot of clients and I do ads for a living, so you know, and I do a lot of social media ads. So when CapCut came out, then people started doing their own ads. And I'm like, A, these aren't going to perform. And B, I hate that program. It's going to take away my job, but I'm glad they blocked it.
That's a big deal on, you know, getting ads to perform on social media. That is like the biggest revenue booster now. It makes so much of a difference. It's such a skill set. Yeah,
you have to do different ad formats, you know, us versus them ads.
Testing. You got to test too, right?
A/B testing, yep. Message testing. I could just go on all day about it.
The stuff that I never do. I never do any testing on anything. I'm just like, well, my testing is if the show goes well, that's my mental testing, I guess. Then I know. The question is from Bites, Bits, Dog Bites. Abby, I'm a former technology exec with a superpower for translating geek speak into layman's terms. I'm going to DM you on Twitter if you want to collaborate.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Oh my God, I love that.
And like I said, Abby's links are all at the top of the chat. They're pinned to the chat. I want to thank our moderators. They have her X account and her YouTube account. So please follow her on both of those. You got some videos. How many videos you got up there on YouTube right now?
I have one, but I'm going to add some more. So I'm going to do a longer form of basically what we did tonight, just to break it down a little bit more. So I'm just waiting on the last step where I'm trying to redo the workflow with FFmpeg, and I'm trying to get it so I can authenticate it, but I haven't been able to do it yet. So I keep crashing the program, but I did get it to play. So that's going to be the next video that's going to be in there.
And Sarah, our moderator, said your sub count is going up. I'm sure it is. I'd like to see it go way up tonight. And if you want to use anything that we talked about tonight, edit that, put it on your channel. Definitely do that. I'd love that to see that too. Podcast. Podcast. Video Jesus. I'm going podcast Jesus because of Kirk Minahan. I hear that a lot. You're video Jesus. And then there's journalism Jesus, which is a turtle boy. You're the video Jesus. I got all my Jesuses right tonight.
I just, I pray to my one true video Lord.
Yeah. She's the video Jesus. I love it. Oh, thank you so much for being here. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want to say tonight? Anyone you want to shout out? You mentioned Microdots earlier. Anyone else that you like the work of, especially like in the Free Karen Reed movement or, anywhere?
Oh, yeah. Just Brit, I think was the podcast. It's Just Brit, right?
Yeah, she was here tonight.
Yeah, Just Brit. I was on her podcast, of course, Oblivious Benson. We've done a couple of different live streams recently, so check those out.
Excellent. And I like both of them. I watch them both, actually. I just was watching Just Burt the other night with Jen, Justin Root's sister, which was a
Yeah.
good show she did. And she's got another great show coming up, I think, with only Nan, who was here tonight in the chat, Nan Gallagher, the attorney. And Oblivious is funny. She just,
Oh, she's
her and I got wrestling. And we both like John Cena. We're both big John Cena marks. We just love John
nice.
Cena. So, yeah, I like Oblivious. She's funny.
She actually understands it too, because she has, like a tech background. So
yeah.
we've done a couple of live streams on it. She's so funny. She makes you feel very relaxed. I know I'm not the best on air, but
No, you did good tonight. You did really good. I know
Okay,
you're a little
thanks.
nervous, but you did like phenomenal. I like OB because she nailed like her and Jimmy, Auntie Deb.
Yeah.
They both nailed me right away. Like they were just like described me to a T. She was calling me Uncle Mike. He's like your cool older uncle, little stoner, just chill, but he could still mess you up. He can wrestle. Like I was like, oh my God, she knows me too well. And then Jimmy was like, he just ripped me apart in a second. He was like, what do you call me? Uptight stoner. Like, or no, buttoned up. That's because I was all buttoned up that night. It's true.
I love Auntie Deb. He's amazing. That's my other shout out. I know he's like kind of taking a little bit of a break, but
I love Auntie Deb.
Oh, I love Auntie Deb. He is just so wonderful, and he's so funny and just so genuine, and I could just go on and on about him.
Yeah, and you know how much money he raised for Karen Reed?
So much.
Like watching those shows, and the way he gives away things, the items. He sent me a shirt. I got the sidebar. I got this green sidebar T-shirt from Jimmy, from Auntie Deb, and I just love what he does. And
yeah,
it's just
he's
it's
really
amazing.
selfless
The
in his
songs,
fundraising.
yeah, the songs he made up. It's just funny as hell. So I love Auntie Deb too. Big Auntie Deb fan. Yeah, we got a lot of love in the chat for Auntie Deb too. Auntie brings joy.
Okay.
Yeah,
He
what's so
does.
funny?
He brings such joy and love.
Good time, Julie. When he goes after Julie. Good time,
Oh my
Julie.
God, I love it.
Oh my God. And
Whenever
then
I'm
we
having
went
a
after
bad day, I
Kevin.
just go over to
Yeah.
Auntie Deb's channel or like go to his Twitter, and I'm automatically, less sad.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I was on a show with him one night and I told him, I think I said I was afraid of him. Like out of all the YouTubers and everybody else, I was most afraid of him because he's funny. And I know like comedians could just destroy you in like 2 seconds. Like he's like, me? No way. But then I've seen him like absolutely destroy people in like a 2-minute video. People that
Yeah.
deserve it, but he's just really good at that shit.
He is. He's very witty.
He is.
I like it. He does
Yeah,
it in a
me
very
too.
funny, witty way, which is it's a very rare skill.
And this is a good comment about Auntie Deb. And his heart is in the right place. It really
Yeah.
is. Well, we agree on a lot. I'm so happy that you were here tonight, Abby.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Video Jesus. Make sure you're following her if you're not on Twitter and YouTube as well. Thank you again. I hope you come back. And we should just to have you on to talk about Karen Reed. I know you follow the case. We could probably talk about other things related to the case, but anytime you want to come on, just hit me up. I'd love to have you back.
Oh, I'd love that.
Awesome. Thank you for being here tonight, Abby. Have a great night.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye now. We'll see you on X. Yeah, that was good. I kind of needed that too. That was, something different. That was a good discussion. I just want to check everything out. Oh, look, Sarah C sent me $15 just now on Venmo. Thank you so much, Sarah C. You rule. Thank you so much. And I'm going to check the Cash App real quick. I see some super chats coming in tonight too. I think we're good there. Thank you so much for the Venmo. Excuse me. And thank you, Sherry D. Very much appreciate that. Thank you, M. Thank you to all of our moderators. Thank you, our mods, MJ, Sarah, and Shock and Horror, who helped me out tonight, making sure I got all the super chats up there, the questions. Thank you so much, Sarah. I want to thank Stephanie, and I want to thank Jen and Scott McGinnis. I saw him in the chat as well tonight. Thank you to our mod team. Our mod team kicks ass. They really are. We have a good team. And the way that we kind of operate, we all kind of, when there's certain decisions to be made, we take votes. You know, it's a lot of times up to this mod team. And not only that, they cover me. They warn me. They give me the heads up. I really appreciate our mod team. They have the best intentions for this community, and they give us a good chat. They post the links. They're always here. Make sure you thank them and be very nice to them, please, always. Not only that, they keep me up. Sometimes I get a little, there's been a lot of stuff going on lately that not the greatest. It's got to be, behind the scenes stuff you really don't want to bring on the show. And at this point, I don't even want to discuss it on Twitter. Like, I'm trying to chill out on Twitter a little bit because that's where all the drama always rears its ugly head. But that mod team is so solid. They always say the right things to me. They keep me going. If I get my spirits down a little bit, they get me right back up. And I am so thankful for our mods. They deserve all the love we can give them. Yeah, they keep me out of the drama as much as possible. And sometimes it's me. Sometimes I have to just stop. It's different. It's different when you all of a sudden you go from having, 500 or 1,000 followers forever. That's basically where I was. I mean, I had maybe 10,000 on Facebook, but that's not the same as having 40,000 on YouTube or whatever we have right now. It's just a different feeling. And people expect you to act differently. It's true. And you kind of have to, because you're going to take a lot of shit from people. And a lot of times it's just crazy people. There's just a lot of craziness going on right now, unfortunately. But that's why I'm thankful for our team. Our team, we could discuss everything, and they always have our back. So I'm really thankful for them. And I'm also thankful for all of you in the chat. Tonight was just another example. I knew this was going to be good content. It was going to be something that I was interested in hearing. I was happy to have Abby on. I asked her, I was like, Abby, you got to come on the show. You got to come. And you guys showed up. That makes me feel good. When you guys show up for something that's quality, it really does help us. So thank you for watching. Thank you for checking this out. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the super chats. And I love to see our chat tonight. We had some great people on there, from Olivia Nile to Only Nan to so many others. I saw Mazza earlier. I saw James Jackson. And we had a lot of our regulars like Sherry D, and who were some of the others tonight? Leia Baker. I love seeing you all. Kelly. Larry Legend. We had a legend here tonight. Romy, thank you so much. Coffee Cake. Thank you. Britt Happens. Thank you so much. All right. I'm not sure when our next show will be. I'm trying to think. Do we have... Oh, you know what? Tomorrow morning. Definitely going to be streaming tomorrow. Karen Reed, 9 a.m. Check it out. Everyone's going to be live tomorrow morning broadcasting the Karen Reed hearing at 9 a.m. I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. There's a couple different shows happening tonight right now. Nurse Kim is on. I know that. She's doing a big fundraiser with Meredith, the cat fundraiser. If you can, check that out. Support that. Give some contributions to Karen Reed. FreeKarenReed.net if you want to make some donations. Mazza Media is also going to have a big Thursday night fundraiser for Karen Reed. That's tomorrow night. So check that out tomorrow night. And also tonight, LTL Media is on, I think right about now. We're going to redirect you to LTL Media right now when I hit the end stream. So check that out. Go support the other YouTubers too. And like I said, I'll be live streaming the Karen Reed case with no commentary. You know how I do it. I just play the live video. You'll see the live stream, and hopefully we'll have good audio like we always do. And we'll be in the chat tomorrow, 9 a.m. Karen Reed hearing tomorrow morning. And I'm not sure. I may do a show tomorrow evening or Friday. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens at that hearing tomorrow. Got to play it by ear. Just make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. You like the video tonight. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the Karen Reed hearing. Have a great